Tonight, as more unbelievably graphic details come to light about the disappearance of a Washington Post writer in the Saudi consulate in Turkey, the president inexplicably still refuses to call out the Saudis, even though their fingerprints are all over this. Also, Bob Mueller's report on the Russia probe expected to drop right after the midterm elections. We're going to take a look at how that will work and also how it may play out. A former federal prosecutor joins us to help us sort it all out. Then our panel of attorney joins us to discuss a disturbing trend. People calling the cops on what seems to be a pattern of African Americans who are not even breaking laws, whether they're swimming in a pool, whether they're going to a barbecue, or even just going home. The question is, more than harassment, should that be against the law? Well, soon it might be. We'll explain. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Richard French. We begin again tonight with a murder mystery surrounding missing Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. Now, he entered the Saudi consulate in Turkey 2 weeks ago, and he never came out. President Trump commenting on this from the Oval Office just a few hours ago, and he was asked why he's giving cover to the Saudis. Here's our president's answer.
I'm not giving cover at all. With that being said, Saudi Arabia has been a very important ally of ours in the Middle East. If you look at Saudi Arabia, they're an ally and they're a tremendous purchaser of not only military equipment, but other things. When I went there, they committed to purchase $450 billion worth of things and $110 billion worth of military. Those are the biggest orders in the history of this country, probably the history of the world.
So you know, none of the numbers he just mentioned have been verified by anyone, or have we seen any of the money, but it's almost beside the case. You don't have to be a professional translator to figure out what's being said. Even though cold murder here, torture of an American journalist by a so-called ally, well, if it comes with a price, well, that's a mitigating factor, apparently. Trump also talking about the case during a print interview with the AP. This is what he had to say. Quote, again, President Trump speaking, I think we have to find out what happened first. Here we go again with, you're guilty until proven innocent. I don't like that. We just went through that with Justice Kavanaugh, and he was innocent all the way as far as I'm concerned. We already know a lot of the gruesome details, horrific details, in fact, of what happened inside that consulate. And for more, I want to bring in our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman. And Andrew, we're going to get into the detail, I know you will in a second, but this is not some theory that's been proffered out there. This has been substantiated by some people that are close to it. We're still waiting for a lot of the details, but the granular grotesqueness and the planning that seemingly went on to carry this out is just mind-blowing.
It's pretty clear when you look at the evidence that we're hearing from Turkish media, and they're getting it from the Turkish government, that this was not an accident, that this was pre-planned, and that this certainly is particularly grisly, Rich. At this point, we still don't know precisely how long Khashoggi lived after he entered the consulate, but we suspect his final moments on Earth were painful and bloody. Turkish officials now believe that the Washington Post columnist was seized almost immediately after he entered the consulate, it's shown there, perhaps just as soon as he walked through the door that you just saw in that video. And he may have only lived a few minutes longer. Turkish officials now believe that almost immediately after he walked in, Khashoggi was beaten and had his fingers severed, in addition to having other forms of torture applied. Reports indicate that Khashoggi was in so much pain and making so much noise, he was then drugged and later beheaded before his entire body was dismembered. And it all happened so quickly, the Turks believe, that it would seem to have had to have been intentional, putting to rest Saudi claims that the killing happened by accident. According to reports both there and here, Khashoggi was dead within minutes, and his killers were gone from the consulate in less than 2 hours. This and other information may have come from a recording made by Khashoggi's iWatch. We're also getting more information about who the Turks believe was at the consulate at the time of the murder, seeming to again confirm that this was no accident. And given that so many of these Saudis have direct ties to the Saudi crown prince, that makes it that much more unlikely that the prince did not know of what was happening. One of the men pops up in photo after photo of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, as you can see in the Times here, even in the prince's recent tour of the U.S. That man is described as a bodyguard/companion of the prince, someone with direct access to the prince himself. In fact, 9 of the 15 people that Turks say entered the country just before Khashoggi's murder and left just after have direct connections to the Saudi security services, the Saudi military, or other Saudi government entities. In addition to the prince's bodyguard, 3 other members of the Crown Prince's security detail have also been identified, as has a forensic doctor with the Saudi Interior Ministry, a man who specializes in performing autopsies. Now, that information, plus word that the Saudis traveled to Turkey with a bone saw, would imply that the killing of Khashoggi was always the plan. Plus, cameras caught a cleaning crew entering the consulate right before Turkish officials arrived with a forensic team to begin their investigation. So clearly there was something inside the consulate that needed to be cleaned up. And again, most of the details about what happened comes from audio and possibly videotape from inside the consulate that the Turks claim to have. So what is President Trump saying about all that possible evidence?
We have asked for it if it exists. We have asked for it. Yeah.
But you haven't got.
We've asked for it if it exists.
Are you surprised that they haven't turned it over? Or?
No, I'm not sure yet that it exists. Probably does, possibly does.
Okay, so I got a host of questions on this. The question of why. And I want to remind viewers, this is not some one-off from the president in that it takes people aback that he defends unsavory characters. This, trust me, could be a much longer clip, but see, here are some of the highlights, or in my view, lowlights, of the president defending the indefensible.
I think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be. I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial. Now, Manafort has totally denied it. He denied it.
Roy Moore denies it. That's all I can say. He denies it. And by the way, he totally denies it.
Chairman Kim would like to have another meeting. We'll have a meeting. And I was really being tough, and so was he. And we would go back and forth, and then we fell in love. Okay?
Okay, so Andrew, is it just that he likes despots? Or is there something different here when it comes to Saudi Arabia? The general question, why? I mean, members of his own political party, I mean, Lindsey Graham and others have said sanctions up the wazoo. There seems to be support bipartisan, as bizarre as that sounds, heaven forbid, on Capitol Hill, that they will not tolerate this. But yet the president, and by the way, Mike Pompeo and other surrogates, now we might even have Steve Mnuchin here, still attend a conference that everybody else is fleeing, yet he still is in the tank at this moment with the Saudis. Why?
Well, first of all, the president does like despots, as we've seen before. When you played the clip of all the people that he's defended saying, yeah, you know, benefit of the doubt, they claim they're innocent, the one thing that they all had in common is that Trump benefits from their innocence and success. Whether it was Kim in North Korea and he wants that deal to work, whether it's Roy Moore in a Senate election that's in the balance, whether it's Putin and Trump's connections with Russia, Trump benefits from those people getting the benefit of the doubt. Turns out there's even more linkage between Trump and the Saudi government and Prince bin Salman that would link Trump to him and have him benefiting from their innocence. And I want to go through the list a little bit because the Trump administration has a lot to lose if something goes wrong with that relationship, as does Trump personally. In dealing with Iran, the U.S., the Trump administration, wants the Saudis to help enforce new sanctions against Iran. The U.S. sees the Saudis as a key to an Israeli-Palestinian peace plan, and so they don't want to mess that up. Oil. The U.S. needs the Saudis to produce more oil, particularly if Iran is sanctioned and they can't sell oil internationally. Trump also needs a large oil supply to help keep prices down and keep the economy humming. If he takes sanctions against Saudi Arabia, production goes down, prices go up. The arms deal, there's that $110 billion deal. By the way, that deal's not finalized. The Saudis have only signed a letter of intent, and they missed a September deadline on that, so that remains in flux. And then we get to the shadier part, the personal and private business deals. Trump has projects in Saudi Arabia, and the Saudis have real estate and other deals with American real estate here in Trump properties as well as Kushner properties. So there's a lot of linkage between the two. It is in Trump's best interest if the relationship between bin Salman and himself, as well as between the U.S. and the Saudi Arabia, remains strong.
You mentioned Kushner. Jared Kushner, supposedly the broker here of Mideast peace and all the rest, had a direct relationship with the prince in question. Now, all of a sudden, he's gone radio silent, won't answer questions, won't even allow people to come close to him on this.
And we've heard reporting that the Saudis view Kushner as a malleable fool, if you will, somebody who can be easily persuaded and convinced. They said they think he's in their pocket.
Apparently, he's had secret correspondence with them that even our intelligence officials have been kept in the dark on, people at state, etc., after everything that went on. Remember with that private land Russia. Okay, next thing. It's not just Trump. If you look at Mike Pompeo and the bro hug he seemingly did when he was dispatched by the president at the beginning of this week to go meet the Saudis, didn't press for answers. He said they're committed to transparency. They killed the guy 2 weeks ago, and they haven't turned over information. On top of that, Heather Nauert, the spokesperson for the State Department, she goes over to Saudi Arabia and basically she took a selfie here with the mosque behind her. They're the only ones seemingly globally who haven't gotten the message that this is really bad. There's a huge conference set up like Davos in the desert. Mm-hmm. You already have just about every major banking executive globally has said thanks, but no thanks, we're no longer going. The head of the IMF isn't going right now. Other world leaders have already pulled out.
But who is still going?
Steve Mnuchin said, yeah, unless I hear different, I'm planning on going. It is so bad, the American look on this thing.
It is, but again, when you consider how much this administration has to lose if the relationship with Saudi Arabia goes sour, or how much they've invested, not just financially, but their political capital they've invested in this Saudi government.
Can I be a cynic for a minute? They need us more than we need them.
Yes.
I'm talking about the Saudis. And this constant approach of, well, I'm dealing from a position of weakness, so I have to do everything to basically capitulate to a bad actor here to go along, to get along. Where else are the Saudis going to go?
That's absolutely true. There are arms suppliers that they could go to, but they need us to keep their planes flying and to keep their attacks in Yemen going. Their war in Yemen would be grounded within 2 or 3 days if we weren't refueling and resupplying them. But again, it's that Saudi Arabia is the linchpin of this administration's Middle East policy and its financial economic policy.
Okay. 2 other quick questions here. I know we're short on time. One is, do you think this happened in a vacuum? In that, listen, presidents, Republicans, and Democrats, they've turned blind eyes to certain things with the Saudis, and we've had relationships with the royal family for a long time. Okay? Yes, bad actors, but we serve each other. But the brazenness of these actions, I really don't believe they would have happened if you had a President Bush or a President Obama in the Oval, and I certainly don't believe there would have been the same response. Do you think any of the language of the president to how he treats both press, and this was a member of the Washington Post, by the way, with an American, the guy with a green card from America, I should mention, do you think that this is coincidence that this is happening on this president's watch, or do you think certain world leaders are taking a cue?
I think that the administration has allowed bin Salman, as he took over in Saudi Arabia, increasingly to operate in the dark and without any international condemnation. He brought a lot of his members of his family and of the government into the Ritz-Carlton in Riyadh and basically tortured them all until they all aligned with him. He basically kidnapped the Prime Minister of Lebanon, forced him into Riyadh, held him for 2 weeks because of the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Lebanon. They've gradually been increasing their footprint and increasing their brutality, and it's gone unchecked. So that lesson hasn't gone learned. The connection about Khashoggi being a journalist and about Trump's view of journalism, it wouldn't surprise me if they took that liberty. It's a little surprising that the Saudis felt so bad about Khashoggi that they felt the need to kill him. I mean, it didn't seem like he was loosening their grip on power in Saudi Arabia. So.
Listen, it's a dirty world. Unholy alliances have to happen. Mm-hmm. But the absence of even the possibility of moral leadership from the United States, my God, how quickly things have changed in just 2 years' time. And that's not a partisan thing or anything else. But the idea that you could have moral leadership from this administration is so beyond the pale, and it's so transactional. I didn't believe anything could change that fast in 2 years, but here we are. Andrew, thank you very much. All right, coming up next, the Mueller probe could be winding down, and the report could come right after Election Day. But the question is, what happens then? Former federal prosecutor joins us to help us walk through it. Stay with us.